A very good morning to all. On behalf of the Center for Economic and Social Studies and on my own behalf, I extend a very warm welcome to all the dignitaries here and the delegates that have come from various places of the country. I welcome the chairperson of IASSI, Professor Sachin Chaturvedi, who's Director General, Research and Information Systems for Developing Countries, Professor Dhananjay Singh, who is Member Secretary, ICSSR, and he's here for the first time. And Sri K. Ramakrishna Rao, Special Chief Secretary, Finance, Government of Telangana, and Member Board of Governors of Center for Economic and Social Studies. And Professor S. Mahindra, who is the President of this 22nd IASSI conference, Editor EPW, and also our former Director, Center for Economic and Social Studies. And we also have here Professor C.H. Hanumantarao, who is Honorary Professor and Founder Member CES, Professor S.R. Hashim, former Member Secretary, Planning Commission, former Chairman UPSC, and former Chairman IASSI, Professor Deepak Nair, Professor Emeritus Professor JNU, Professor D. Narasimha Reddy, former Professor of HCU, Professor J. Mahinder Reddy, who is Founder Member of our Center, CES, Professor Sita Prabhu, Board of Governors CES, Professor Alakan Sharma, Director IHT, who is the key person behind this organization, IASSI and IASSI team, IHT team, Professor Pramod Kumar, directors from other ICSR centers, and Professor Govind Kelkar, Sathya Acharya, Ashima Sood, and all delegates from other research institutions, universities, and fellow researchers, and our own faculty and research students, scholars, and all. I welcome you all for this 22nd annual conference of the IASSI. I think we all know about the association. Priyanka Tyagi has introduced that association, which it has a robust and diverse membership comprising of 309 member institutions and diverse all over the country, research institutions, universities and all, and conducting interdisciplinary research. That's the strength of this association. And it brings together experts, academics and policymakers, facilitates dialogues, discussion, and comes up with innovative solutions to the socio-economic problems that face the country, and topically. And currently, I think with Professor Sachin Chaturvedi serving as the chairman of the association, the IASSI benefits from this esteemed association in many ways. The leadership of the association, in conjunction with the wealth of knowledge and experience within the diverse membership, positions it as a leading force in the advancement of social sciences in India, and also fosters academic excellence and interdisciplinary collaboration among institutes of high repute. I thank the IASSI for giving us the opportunity to host this 22nd annual conference, and where our former director, Professor Mahinder Dev, will be giving the presidential address on inclusive development in India, agriculture, hunger, poverty, inequalities, and human development. The conference discusses the three primary areas of research, that is sustainable development, urbanization and development, and women empowerment, all of which are interrelated and present a comprehensive picture of the development process in India. I think around 200 papers have been received for the conference, of which 135 would be presented in this 3 days. The highest number of papers are received in the women empowerment theme. It is contextual for me to mention that NABARD has given financial support for focusing on women empowerment and discussions thereof on various programs and their impact. The 7 plenary sessions encompassing panel discussions on India's employment challenge, book discussion on achieving zero hunger, and 2 memorial lectures, one in the memory of our beloved former director and chairman, Professor Radhakrishna, and other in the memory of Professor Tarlok Singh by esteemed professors, is an academic bonanza for the faculty, research scholars and students. We have invited all local colleges, faculty, students, scholars, so that to take the opportunity to get exposed to the latest issues in social science research and to participate in this 3-day conference. I hope the participants from outside the state would have a memorable stay here and enjoy the warmth of Hyderabad known for its biryani and meeting and getting together and interacting with one another. Thank you all.
Shri K. Ramakrishna Rao is an IAS officer from the batch of 91 with a long list of accomplishments attached to his name. He started his career as a joint collector for the Nalagunda district, followed by the district collector and magistrate for the Guntur district. Shri Rao has been the former additional secretary in the planning and finance departments from the years 2017 to 21. He is currently the special chief secretary to the government finance and planning department. It is my honor to invite him to give his special address.
Dignitaries, Professor C.H. Hanumantrao garu, Professor Deepak Nairji, Sri S.R. Hashim, Sri D.N. Reddy garu, Sri Mahendra Reddy garu, and dignitaries on the dais, Professor Dhananjay Singh, Professor Mahendra Dev, and the Director of SES, Professor Revati, and all the participants who have come here today. It's an honor and privilege to welcome all of you to Hyderabad. On behalf of SES, on behalf of Government of Telangana, I welcome you for this session. The focus of this particular discussion, in this particular conference that we are going to have, is on sustainable development, urbanization, and development and women empowerment, which are absolutely key topics, the challenges which the country is facing and the states are facing today. So this annual conference of the Indian Association of the Social Science Institutions, with all their wisdom, hopefully should be able to throw good insights into these key development challenges which the country and the states collectively will face in India today. Just for reference, today in India, because of the growth, because of the size of the country, some of the states have become as big as countries of the world. For instance, yesterday only I was in US attending a meetings in a small state there, and when I was talking to the finance department people and the director of budget there, this is a small state called Iowa, he was telling me their budget is about $8 billion. Whereas a medium-sized state like Telangana, we are handling a budget of $30 billion. So, therefore, you can see that in terms of size, in terms of growth, in terms of challenges, which many of the states in the country face today, are the same which many of the countries in the world face today. And therefore, it is equally important that we come out with insights, actionable ideas, so that the policies of the government, both of the center and state, are based on this. The challenges are very, very well known, because fast growth obviously means that we are going to consume the resources which are made available to us by Mother Nature in a very quick fashion. We are a $3.5 trillion economy. Even if we grow 10%, that means we'll be adding another $350 billion every year, which is a significant consumption of the resources of the Mother Earth. Now, how we are going to do that in a fashion which will leave something for the children and our grandchildren and for the future generations to come is going to be an enormous challenge. Whether it be in terms of air pollution, water pollution, and other pollutions that we face on a daily basis, or whether it be in terms of production of food grains and other things that we have to keep pace with the increasing population, with the increasing per capita income, with the changing consumption patterns. So that is going to be a huge challenge. There are opportunities available to us across the world and across India. We are seeing that the transition is being made into green energy resources, and technology is improving very, very fast. For instance, in 2014, when the state was formed, when we called for tenders for the solar energy, we had only 1 megawatt of solar energy in the state that at that particular point of time. Today we have more than 5,000 megawatts of solar energy. The first tenders that we got it at the rate of 5.6 rupees per unit, per kilowatt hour. Whereas today, we are able to procure electricity from renewable sources, from solar sources, at around 2 rupees per unit. So this is possible with the improvements in the technology. This is possible with the reduction in the cost. which is happening, with the quick adoption, transition which is happening towards green energy. Not only that, even in the automobile sector, we are seeing a lot of changes. RTC, which didn't even have a single electric bus, today operates more than 1,000 electric buses in the state. So these are all the changes which are happening in front of our eyes, but then the challenges are also immense. We are some of the most polluted cities in the world, in India today. But then how do we ensure that we tackle these problems, is a very big challenge. Similarly, in terms of urbanization, as all of you are aware, as the economy progresses, as the surplus labor shifts from agriculture to manufacturing, services and other sectors of the economy, the key challenge is going to be how do we produce the jobs which are required for this kind of a transition, the structural transformation which will happen in any economy. It's almost the iron dome. And urbanization brings its own challenges, and a small state like Telangana also we are facing those challenges, because how do we provide the necessary infrastructure in terms of drinking water, in terms of roads, in terms of housing, in terms of land development. So therefore these are going to be some of the key challenges that we face as we grow. And different states of the country will face these challenges at different points of time. So therefore it will be a tremendous advantage to us in the sense that the states which are urbanizing fast, whatever lessons that are applicable, whatever lessons that we learn from there, if we are able to utilize those in terms of the lessons in the other states, I think that will be a great advantage to a vast country like India. And of course, women empowerment, all of us are aware that in the S12 state of Andhra Pradesh, even in Telangana, there have been a number of attempts which we have made in the state in terms of empowering women, in terms of the self-help group movement, which is one of the first in the country, in terms of providing access to credit to self-help groups. A lot of effort was made. But in spite of that, as we read in every newspaper, today as a country we face extremely low women labor participation rate. So therefore, in fact, it's a very topical subject, because I think this year Nobel Prize went to a topic which is very much related to this. So therefore, how do we ensure that women not only are productively engaged within the economy, but also we have to ensure that how do we provide them safety, security, so that they feel comfortable. Immense value, not only at the country level, but also at the state level. Therefore, I take this opportunity to wish all the best to all the conference participants, and I also hope that CES would be able to generate from this conference, from the academic research, and distill that into actionable insights, so that the states and country would be able to benefit from that. Thank you very much.
English and is a renowned expert in literary and cultural studies. He is the member secretary of Indian Council of Social Science Research and is elected president of the Association of Asian Social Science Research Councils. Professor Singh has worked as a teacher, editor and visiting professor at prestigious national and international universities. He was awarded research secondment by the European Union's Marie Curie International Team for the project Social Performance, Cultural Trauma and Re-establishing Social Sovereignties at Trinity College, Dublin. It is indeed an honor to invite Professor Dhananjay Singh to deliver the inaugural address of the 22nd IASSI Annual Conference.
Thank you so much. Honorable Professor S. Mahiladiji, Shri K. Ramakrishna Rao, Professor Revati, from CES, Professor Sachin Chaturvedi, Dr. Suresh Reddy, Professor Ahmad Rao, Professor Mayor, Professor Sharma, other very senior, respected, accomplished senior social scientists, my colleagues, friends, scholars, researchers. As I was said, I come from the humanities, and the reason for me being in social science, ICSR, the cultural studies, is a core part of social science. That's why it's been perceived. Increasingly, I can see that interdisciplinarity and transdisciplinarity it becomes an important focus in social science research, also in science research. Obviously, humanities, obviously, in core pure social science, you observe facts, and in humanities, you observe emotions. We use creative imagination, use perceptive imagination, obviously, where you draw upon your frameworks. From ICSSR's perspective, the theme of the conference, obviously, urbanization, development, gender empowerment, women empowerment, and sustainable development. These are, as was just said by Sri Rao, these are also the core areas, three of the core areas that we understand as very important in ICSSR, and we've been supporting research in these areas. As Professor Revati said, that they're integrated, obviously. They're integrated in the sense that urbanization, which of course involves migration, which also involves transfer of labor force from the rural, of course, rural setup to the urban setup, also increasingly leads to the problem of development, issue of housing, obviously. That's where some of the schemes of the government, of course, recently announced comes for a serious empirical study that we have recently funded. Sustainable development is something which, of course, relates to the other two, obviously, and is integrated in this. Sustainable Development Goals 2030, as you know, UN Sustainable Development Goal 2030 was a mainstay of the declaration of the G20 that happened recently. And if you look at the 17 SDGs, obviously, if you include sanitation as the 6th SDG, the first 6 SDGs are non-negotiable, obviously, they're non-negotiable. Whether it's poverty, removal of poverty or hunger, or for instance, even other sustainable development goals, for instance, education. All these are extremely important for us, and of course, climate crisis that we are facing quite consistently we've been facing. Therein, of course, the issue of transdisciplinarity becomes important, because all these themes, all the issues that these themes contain do not simply have a very limited disciplinary perspective and cannot be actually approached with a limited methodology. And I'm sure that I'm seeing most of the economists here. I met a sociologist who was not met but was introduced. But I'm sure that all these themes require other disciplines in social sciences, including sociology, and including also culture studies, of course, culture and language studies, because obviously at times language studies and culture studies is at the margins of social science. And I was taken by a lovely surprise when I attended the International Science Council conference recently, of course, in Kuala Lumpur, where they merged the International Social Science Council and the International Science Council, and they brought in human sciences. The point that I'm trying to say is this, that and therein the issue of gender and women empowerment also becomes important from a different perspective. Is this that unless and until there's an attempt to sort of kind of also see through the limited categories that modes of analysis provide. Now, I'll just give an example. Obviously, I come from military culture studies. Amitabh Ghosh is one of the writers that we read. Amitabh Ghosh is one also who's responsible for bringing climate crisis and climate precarity in discussion in recent times in 20th, 21st century. The idea that he says is that it's the 19th century, obviously, 19th century enlightenment, and this whole discourse of progress, of science, of modernity, of course, which also is responsible for many of the categories in social sciences that evolved in late 19th century and early 20th century, or are better let them be to understand that. The point that he says is this, that is a point where something significant happens in late 20th century, which is this, that the human self becomes exclusively important than the non-human self. Now that is at the core of, to me, that's the core of social science research. And that's something which is not very, at least from this perspective, is not something which is very new to the way Indians have thought through ages, obviously. there's one Upanishad, obviously Chandogya Upanishad, where there's a conversation which, of course, a teacher feels surprised when a disciple comes after some time. He asks that, you seem to be a learned person now. Tell me what has been the source of your knowledge. He says that the source of my knowledge have been beings other than men. Therefore, it's important for us also, it's important for a society and economy dominated by men predominantly also to listen to the women's perspective. Their issue of women in the workforce, both primarily skilled workforce, becomes important. Then, of course, what becomes important, of course, is to listen to the other paradigms that come from women who are engaged in what is termed now as women-led development. Also, women who are community leaders. In ICSR, we have also recently privileged research for tribal communities and tribal societies. We have funded close to 200 projects in ICSR. Out of those 200 projects, we have made sure that there is a greater representation of women, also greater representation of researchers from the tribal communities, because there's no point in somebody going and staying in a tribal village. That will be, the discussion came in ICSR, I said that we are repeating the colonial anthropologist idea of studying these societies. At this time, we also need to be critical about the methodology that we're using, especially when we are studying these societies. So urbanization and development, women empowerment, sustainable development, of course, is complex. There's no one way to study this, because there are no one kind of societies. If individuals are different, societies are different, right? Individual emotion, societal. So I'm sure that there will be discussions on these lines as well. And at the same time, what is crucial for social science research, as all of you would know and better than me, obviously, that is crucial to the development of the country. When we're thinking about India's development goals by 2047, if we want to have that kind of a skilled population, obviously young skilled population, by 2035, I think we're going to have the projection, I guess, 345.5 million skilled force by 2035. If we are looking towards becoming a developed nation by 2047, I think, and there's no other way. There can be no plan B, because the demographic dividend that we have will be lost. So this is a time for the social scientists to actually serve the society as such, to serve the local societies, communities, and serve the nations, obviously, and one way to do it is to kind of study the public policies, obviously, and study public policies critically, of course, and of course suggest policy changes and policy implications that realities of societies provide. So I think that objective will be met, and I really congratulate CES, I congratulate the association, obviously, Indian Association of Social Science Institutions. I beg your pardon for that mistake earlier. I'm glad to be invited. I'm also thankful personally to Professor Sachin Chaturvedi for making it a point I'm here. Thank you so much, and all the best.
Thank you so much, Professor Singh. It is now time for the presidential address of this conference, and since the President is making a PowerPoint presentation, I would request all the dignitaries on the dais to kindly move to the side table that is there. Professor S. Manjudev has been the Director and Vice Chancellor of Indira Gandhi Institute of Development Research in Mumbai. Prior to this position, he was Chairman of the Commission for Agricultural Costs and Prices, Ministry of Agriculture. He is Vice Chairman of the Board of Trustees of International Food Policy Research Institute, Washington. He was a member and acting Chairman of the National Statistical Commission, Government of India. He got the prestigious Malcolm Hadassia Award in 2016. He was Director, Center for Economic and Social Studies, where we are right now, Hyderabad, for 9 years. He's an expert on agriculture and rural economy, economics and
faculty and students. A very good morning to all of you. Second annual conference of the Indian Association of Social Science Institutions. So I am grateful to the association for conferring this honor on me. As you know, IASSI is a federal formation of universities and research institutions. It aims to promote and strengthen teaching and research in social sciences. It also published a quarterly titled Contributions to Indian Social Sciences. The annual conference of the association provides opportunities for the young scholars particularly to present research papers and interact with eminent social scientists. So also I am grateful to the SES for organizing this 22nd annual conference of IASSI. So keeping in view of the broader interests of the IASSI, I have chosen to speak on inclusive development. Three things: agriculture, hunger, 1; poverty and inequalities, 2; and human development. It is known that the topic inclusiveness is one of the most discussed development problem all over the world. So my presidential address is already distributed. It's a long one, so I have prepared a PowerPoint so that we can manage the time. So I will basically summarize, if we give a summary of the address. The data 8%, cereals is only 16% in the total value. In fact, horticulture and cereals are similar shades. Livestock almost nearly coming to 30%. So this is true of many states in India. I have given the state-wise table. I am not going to detail. Many states have heavily crops have increased. Yeah, for example, the crop sector last 2015 to 2021 about 2% growth, and about 7.7 livestock, and fishing and all about 8% or so. And what are the challenges and policies? Because we have achieved, but there are several challenges. The green revolution approach has created some problems. We were discussing earlier also the chemical fertilizers, pesticides, and climate change, another problem. And also food and nutrition is another problem. So two new things for agriculture. One is the climate change thing. Second is the food and nutrition aspect is important. And also now the challenges are, as given by Economic Survey and the RBI, we have to reorient our, because of the climate change, rising input costs and low productivity, and also declining R&D with excessive dependence on subsidies and price support schemes. So in the next 25 years, so there is a need to change narrative and policies. In fact, agriculture, if you see the SDG goals, it covers 11 SDG goals. So the importance of agriculture, one should understand. Whereas government policies still favor rice and wheat. For example, 3 crops: rice, wheat, and sugarcane garner 75 to 80% of the water in the country. For example, Punjab, Haryana also, it's not sustainable. So the need for promoting other crops is recognized by the government of India and other states. So for more equitable distribution of water across the country. I listed in the paper the challenges and policies. I won't go into the details. For agriculture are the following. We need to change the narrative in the new context: climate change, nutrition, other things. And we also have to have agri-rural non-farm and remunerative price, and also freedom for farmers, regarding exports and other things. And don't forget the basics like credit. Credit is Samantha keeps saying credit is the most important thing for for the small and marginal farmers and others. And also climate resilient agriculture, and which Dr. Swaminathan calls evergreen revolution. And institutions and governance, because these are important things: water institutions, the climate resilient institutions, and of course digital technology is another important one. If you see the subsidies and public investment, subsidies are 6 to 8% over time, whereas public investment has been 2 to 3% of GDP. So some of the subsidies probably whether it is still needed, or one has to think about that. Coming to the second part of my first component, achieving zero hunger. SDG 2.1, 2.2 deal with hunger and malnutrition. According to Dr. Swaminathan, hunger has three major dimensions. One is calorie deprivation, protein hunger, and micronutrient deficiencies. So India achieved progress in many of the food and nutrition security indicators. Child stunting declined from 48 to 36%. People with BMI below normal for women also declined. But there are 5 challenges on zero hunger. One is the undernutrition, of course, has declined, but still 35% of India's children are stunted here. So the 5 challenges are the following. According to FAO, 16% of population suffer from undernourishment. That is around more than 200 million people. And in spite of decline, 35% of Indian children suffer from stunting, and in some states like Bihar, Jharkhand, it's more than 40%. And also, if we see anemia, still Indian women suffer 57% from anemia. It has increased actually 53 to 57. And another thing FAO mentioned is that 75% of India's population can't afford healthy diet. So that is about $3 per day in PPP terms, per capita per day. So around 100 crore population, they can't afford the healthy diet. At the same time, in urban areas and all, obesity is increasing because of changes in consumption patterns. So these are the 5 challenges, on hunger and malnutrition. In fact, many healthy foods are unaffordable. For example, we take countries like Nigeria or India. Among the consumption of the poor, for example, one egg costs 44% in Nigeria, 18% in India. So affordability is important. So affordable and healthy diets. In fact, myself and one of my colleagues gave the list of what are the pathways for healthy diet. Improving diet diversity, post-harvest losses, because India almost 30% or 35% there are losses, post-harvest losses. And biofortification is important because of micronutrients, empowerment of women, wash, the water, sanitation and the health, and nutrition education and use of technology. These are some of the things I listed in the paper. Also, a book which we are releasing day after on achieving zero hunger. My colleague Ganesh Kumar is there. So we discussed on policies regarding achieving zero hunger. So we need a multi-sectoral approach for this nutrition, particularly, and also hunger reduction. One is health, water, sanitation, food systems, education, social protection. So all these things have to be converged. Now I come to my second part, the poverty and inequalities. Poverty trends. Tendulkar Committee methodology showed significant reduction between 2004-5 and 2011-12. Even Rangarajan Committee also mentioned. And recent reports, multidimensional poverty index also showed significant reduction by 2019-21. And Niti Aayog report also showed that now we have multidimensional about 15% poverty. But we do not have official data on consumer expenditure after 2011-12. In the last 2 years, there have been several studies, World Bank and IMF. For example, Sujit Balla says there is no extreme poverty in India. World Bank study says around 12% in 2021. Subramaniam shows that poverty has increased during 2017-18. Another indicator of poverty is trends in rural wages, because that is another indicator. I think John Reyes and all showed that it was below 1% per year across the board. But PLF's data shows slightly different trends. Its self-employment in real terms, wages, inner earnings have not increased, declined. Regular wage salary work is stagnant. but casual wage workers some increase in the PLF's data. So policymakers of course continue threefold strategy for poverty reduction: GDP growth, employment creation, and of course the direct social protection programs. Yeah, if you see real monthly earnings by category, this is regular salaried workers. It has been stagnant. And also self-employment also is stagnant, declined. The casual wage slight increase over time. Now within the second one, the inequalities. In fact, inequalities are high in India, particularly in income and wealth. Professor Mantra's paper also mentions the income inequalities. It has increased over time, particularly in urban areas. Recent survey also showed on wealth. And also the recovery, they say K-shaped recovery in the post-pandemic period. Still informal sector and all fully have recovered. These are old numbers, but if you see consumption Gini, it is 0.36, but if it is income Gini coefficient is 0.55, almost 20 points more. And wealth Gini is much higher, 74 or so in Gini coefficient. In fact, a paper presented at CES by Kakwani and Zekaria, prepared for CES, they examine whether growth and development in India have been pro-poor and inclusive over 2 decades. So there are 2 conclusions on that. They use per capita state domestic product and conclude that India has not been pro-poor or inclusive. But they use well-being indicators like infant survival rate, literacy rate and all, show that India has been pro-poor. But there is a problem with the second one, because the well-being indicators has some limitations. There is an asymptotic limit, because life expectancy cannot be more than 85, 90 or something, whereas income keeps on increasing. So income inequalities are equally important. When one can look at well-being should be faster and all, but looking at that and saying that inequality reduce, there is some problem. So coming to the policies for reducing inequalities, the productive employment is central for reducing inequality. So everybody should get productive employment. Because also need for structural transformation, as mentioned earlier. I think Professor Deepak Nair examined the experience of structural transformation for 14 countries in Asia over the last 50 years. So some followed the classical pattern from agriculture to manufacturing, and some jumped from agriculture to services. So India belongs to the latter category. And also very significant reduction in share of agriculture from 65% to 46%. But this decline is mostly absorbed by construction and informal sectors like trade, hotels, restaurants and all. And the share of manufacturing has been almost not stagnant, but only marginal improvement in employment, about 10.5 to 11.4. So this is one of the biggest disappointments in India's experience on structural transformation. So manufacturing growth is important. I mean, government of India are now trying this Make in India and other programs. Simultaneously, of course, we have to grow services also. So other issues and policies for employment, because employment is crucial for also poverty as well as inequality. There are some positive trends in employment. One, increase in work participation rates during 2017-18 to 22-3. For all ages, it rose. For example, above 15 population, it increased. For youth also, it increased, and particularly high for women in 2017-18 to 22-23. And also unemployment rate declined during this period. Above 15 years declined from 6% to 3%. And educated also, it declined from 11 to 7. And for youth, declined from 17 to 10%. So there are significant, some positive trends in employment. For example, the work participation rates, you can see significant all ages, youth, significant increase in recent times. And unemployment decline also. But there are challenges, as mentioned by Ramkrishna Rao and others, on women labor force participation rates. They have declined initially. For example, 2004-05 it was 41.6, but it declined to 22%, 2017-18, but gradually it increased again. Particularly for women in rural areas, it increased. But there is a debate, increase in women's participation, whether it is a, the productive phenomena or distress phenomena. So still we have to do some research on that, because on paper it shows that self-employed women has increased, which may be more, not a productive kind of employment, but one has to check that. As I also mentioned, the Nobel Prize winner mentioned about even discrimination in the same job for women. So female workforce participation rates, it has declined significantly between 2004-05 to 2017-18, and then increased significantly to almost nearly 35 to 40%. And similarly, the other challenge is youth unemployment. Unemployment among youth is generally 3 times higher than the total unemployment. But unemployment rate among the graduates and above is about 42%. Youth less than 25 years, which is very, very high. So unemployment is concentrated among youth and among educated, because they can wait for getting the good job and all. And also because of this unemployment, demand for reservations, for example, in Maharashtra, Marathas, agitation is going on. So that kind of thing. So one has to take care of the youth unemployment. Another challenge is the high share of informal enterprises. In fact, the percentage of workers in informal enterprises has increased in recent times from 68% to 74%. So in order to reduce inequalities, we need to improve the productivity of informal sector. And some other challenges of employment, social security for gig workers, promotion of MSMEs, and also impact of technology and automation on employment. So the percentage of workers in informal enterprises is increased in recent years. Some other policies for inequalities, social protection policies. We suggested, Rangaraj and myself, minimum basic income, and also some other like more investment in less developed states. For example, Professor Hanumantarao and Dholakia suggested small states, bifurcation of large states into small states can give higher growth and well-being. And similarly, democracy and efficiency of delivery systems. In fact, Professor Hanumantarau's paper 22, which was published in EPW, it gives what are the major areas concerned for inclusive development. One is interstate disparities in development, rural-urban, education, healthcare, and empowerment of women, and marginalized sections, tribals and all. How do you put them, tribals and scheduled castes and all. Inadequate access to institutional credit for weaker sections. And also he keeps talking about the, because we say we don't have money, I'll come to the fiscal deficit and all. But he says, why can't we increase the tax revenue in India? And decentralized development, because Panchayat Raj and all, we had the amendments and all, but still a long way to go for decentralization.
Thank you very much.
Professor Alok Sharma. I also see Professor Hari Babu and Professor Sita Prabhu. On the dais, we have Shri Ramkrishna Rao, Professor Dhananjay Singh, the new member secretary of the IASSI, Professor Mahendra Dev, whom we heard, and the director of the institute, Professor Revati, and also Dr. Sudesh Reddy. So I think, friends, colleagues, it's a great pleasure for us to have this conference focused on the themes that has already been mentioned to all of you, and we just heard this keynote address, which also covered in a way the three themes which we are covering in this conference, bringing in dimensions of women empowerment, women-led economic growth, but also bringing in issues which are relevant for urbanization, and also trying to bring in issues which are very much related to sustainable development. And this, I think, is very pertinent for an organization like IASSI, where we are trying to recontextualize and bring in the wider divide that we see in terms of issues that are there. For instance, if I just pick up from the keynote address that we just heard, in terms of the four different sort of expressions which Professor Mahendra Dev used in terms of pro-poor growth, inclusive growth, inclusive development, and of course the idea of SDG. Where they diverge, where they converge, and how do we interpret them in terms of the empirical evidences that are there. And this is something which is of key significance as we all are looking into the challenges that the social science research per se is facing. And from that point of view, ideas that govern the world because they inform theories which form the basis of policies, and those policies, they affect our lives every day. So how we bring in our idea of inclusive growth, how do we bring in our idea of inclusive development close to SDG, I think is of great significance, and social science would have to see this trajectory of ideas that is coming in from different streams of social sciences. And that's where the dominance that we see of economics as a profession over other social sciences, much to our own peril, but also in terms of within the profession of economics, the dominance that we see of the neoclassical and the neoliberal regimes that have emerged over the years. And this has its limitations in terms of how we bring in the dimension that is required to be revisited from our own perspective. And those of you who might have read Asian drama by Ghulam Midal would do a great service if you also see the Resurgent Asia by Professor Deepak Nair. The Nordic view of economic development, the pessimism that it brings in, and the faith that our own researcher, like what you read in the pages of Resurgent Asia, or even I would say in the book that he did a little before on catch-up. So you find this interpretation largely with the same set of evidences on the same parameters, a very different take in terms of where optimism would come in. So the idea of juxtaposing empirical evidences over your faith and your hope and expectation and the trajectory that the policy decision may take, I think is required to be extremely important. And that's where the choice of our reference points, the choice of our perspectives, they are extremely important. The idea with Adam Smith's theory of moral sentiments is something which brings forward the focus of why it is important to remain connected with ethics and the frameworks that are needed for economic development, and what we heard from Professor Mahendra Dev, not just inclusive growth, but inclusive development. So from that point of view, it becomes important in terms of how we are going to bring that dimension forward. For Europeans, the idea of ethics and value system may be different. For us, ethics may mean AEI's framework that we developed some time back in terms of access, equity and inclusion, and that I think can bring in issues which are of great significance when regimes bring in the dimensions of social change that are important to draw from all other streams that are there. And this is important in terms of how more and more dispensations in Asia are now opting, and for last a decade or so, in fact, what started with the Great Asian Miracle in 1991, we see the state and market balance that Asia could achieve. Unfortunately, the academics haven't risen to that level. The practitioners have contributed. The practitioners have made decisions. We heard Mr. Ramakrishna Rao in terms of explaining how in Telangana they are initiating policy initiatives which are largely trying to bring in a balance in growth and employment. That balance is crucial in terms of how we do that. In RBI, I am seeing it more closely in terms of how the inflation targeting and revision of our rate of interest be done. Earlier, and this was largely against the prescriptions that IMF has been issuing. So the space that we create, the academic research that is required to theorize that is not happening, and members would play a great role in terms of bringing forward issues which are of great significance in this whole journey that we are going to go forward. In the keynote address, Professor Mahendev mentioned about sustainability and issues that are there. I had a privilege to chair T20 as it is called. The task force was Task Force 3. Those of you who have been following G20, I would encourage you to go on the website and see TF3. Professor Sita Prabhu was very closely involved in this. We have tried to delineate the principles that the Indian proposal at G20, which was very widely accepted in terms of the lifestyle for sustainable development. So how do we do nudging at the individual level, at the institutional level, not only in terms of sustainable consumption and production, but also in terms of delineating technological requirements that are extremely important for financing. How NABARD related institutions, the ecosystem within which NABARD is working, should be supporting rural technologies and their infusion in the rural areas where we move towards sustainable development. We grow, but we grow with less carbon footprint. If you pick up statistics for South Asia, the quantum of our contribution in water pollution, that has gone up many times, and this requires a bit of effort in terms of we amending our own behavior. And if I take you back to 1915, there was an editorial which Rabindranath Tagore wrote criticizing Municipal Corporation of Calcutta for deciding to provide piped water in homes of Calcutta. And his idea was that the moment water reaches people, they would forget the value of commons. They would forget the value of water ponds in the locality of Calcutta. So it is important for us to realize the value of commons. And from that perspective, Indian philosophical thought, Indian approach of development has been very profound. The state centrality that has come in requires to be revisited. And that's where the idea of life is trying to bring in this dimension, the dimensions that are important in terms of sustainable consumption and production, both for improving quality of life, for decoupling economic growth with environmental deregulations, and also applying life cycle thinking, particularly from circularity and the circular related economic development. And from that perspective, when, as Professor Mahendev quoted, in terms of inclusive global order, Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, which was the part of the G20's mandate,
If you see the presidency that goes to Brazil has exactly similar concept of Sumak Karjai, which means something like world as one family. And from Brazil, we go to South Africa, and we all know South Africa has this concept of Ubuntu. So India, Brazil, and South Africa, all the three presidencies of G20 have similar faith and action-oriented strategies, which would play an important role in terms of how we look at the distributional justice, the procedural justice, and also the restorative justice, all the three which are important in terms of how we take the idea of life forward. And that probably is also important in terms of how we define this. And the current social science research, which, as I said earlier, is dominated by economics and requires space to be created for other streams to come in, but that won't happen just by placing some sociologist or some philosopher. The integrative approach would come in with the nature of research tools, because specialization is the core for research. We cannot compromise quality of research within the stream. Somehow the interdisciplinarity means the bar to go down. That need not happen. The research tools would have to be strengthened, and from that point of view, the resources that are required, the approaches that are needed in terms of engaging this would be extremely important. And that's where we need to see the new dimensions that are there. The Stiglitz, Sen and Petershri report laid out a roadmap in terms of how an inclusive growth strategy may come in, which was further emphasized by Partha Dasgupta in his report to the UK Treasury, where he emphasized in terms of how well-being related measurements can be done. Now, for this, you do not require all different disciplines to come in, but all different disciplines to draw messages from this within their own disciplines to see how this can actually be done and what kind of convergence is actually possible to take the task forward. And from that perspective, I think it is important, if we are talking about going beyond GDP for development indicator, what kind of formulations are possible. There are different groups that are working on in OECD and other places where discussions on going beyond GDP is happening, where well-being related parameters are being factored in, where biodiversity, water bodies, and other commons related parameters are coming in. Those dimensions of engagement are extremely important. They are in a way pushing beyond the Human Development Index, which has also been evolved by UN. But if you see the Secretary General's latest statement of 22nd June, it lays out a roadmap in terms of how well-being related parameters may then be adopted, and the UN may push in along with HDI, along with GDP forward. If you see what UN has also brought out in June this year, is the commentary that Kuznets himself had on GDP. So the criticism from Kuznets on GDP is nothing new, but this new dimension of development, I think, is extremely important. There is also now a greater need for us to see what kind of contribution at the conceptual level we are making in terms of measurement. And I think my Indian academic community would have to get our acts together in terms of how this is happening. And if I just give you one very small example, Professor Deepak Nair is here,
who has been leading my organization as a governing board member for many years. For 40 years now, IAS is celebrating 40 years of its establishment. Right from Dr. Panchmukhi's days, what we are now trying to do on what comes to my mind is back in 1978 with the Alexander Committee report with Abid Hussain, now is being leveraged as part of
industrial policy dispensation which is coming up in many countries. coming up. But in India, immediately after we embarked on the journey of liberalization, we did away with all sorts of protection. I'm no way suggesting to bring them back, but the point here is the conceptual contributions that we are making and what kind of frameworks that we have. Like, for instance, if in my own profession, I give you one example of regional integration, the index that we very often use, and most of our political leaders, media, they all say that South Asia regional trade integration is very bad, very low. It is just 5%. But this is largely because Bela Balasa evolved the index for a region where trade is not lopsided. In South Asia, trade is so lopsided that India is the pivot country, and others have 80%, 90%, 60% trade with us. So the moment you calculate it, it goes completely haywire. So we need new formulations to measure regional trade integration. In fact, what we did from RIS was to calculate cost of non-cooperation. So to Pakistan, we showed that if Pakistan would import same commodities that they are importing from other countries, and we compared the unit cost of imports of Pakistan, we showed it to them, they would be able to save $7 billion if they import from India and not from anywhere else. So some of these conceptual contributions which think tanks, research institutions are doing, we need to bring them in all streams of our research, so that the social science research is strengthened and it takes forward the way we require to take the idea of social science research forward. It is also important in terms of how the reports are coming in, and sometimes we end up borrowing Western concepts and methodologies largely because the way they are peer reviewed. And I think in India we have no dearth of creating such mechanisms, such possibilities of peer review, and bring in the elegance that is required, the sophistication that is needed for our research, its output, its articulation and presentation, which probably would strengthen the quality of social science research and also bring in greater confidence in terms of how we present it, so that we lead in the global south. Government and government-led initiatives are one, which we heard in the three excellent slides that Professor Mahindev had. But I think it is also important for us to capture it at the conceptual levels that we need. The last point that I want to mention is in terms of rise of technology and its capture by all social sciences. And this, I think, is important, particularly from the perspective of economics, of course, but from sociological perspective, from a perspective of philosophy and other streams of social sciences, to see how we see artificial intelligence, how we see its deployment in health, in banking and finance, and how do we take that forward. Mention was made of my affiliation with this institute and the Policy Planning Commission of Madhya Pradesh. There, one innovative thing we did was to do the financial inclusion calculation at the district level. So the aggregate measures that we do, and we very often compare India with Sri Lanka or with Bangladesh for X or Y. I think our states are to be compared, and I think Mr. Ramakrishna Rao was absolutely right that sometimes even states are as big as a nation. So we need to see the disaggregated data, and that is largely the theme of this conference also under sustainable development, where we are talking about localization. There are 3 papers to be presented in the conference on localization. So it is absolutely essential for us to see how disaggregated data at state level is to be studied in terms of how we do that. The trouble is statistics as a subject at the state level, and to compute indices which are computable at the local level are not there. Unfortunately, this is prevalent even at the GDP calculation at the state. The coefficients which MOSPI is giving are the ones which are being leveraged for state GDP calculations, which is not correct. We need to go bottoms up. The Dholakia Committee report is what to be read by all streams of social
sciences to see how bottoms up district-based GDP calculations can be done, and that's where social science streams would have to come together. There are very few elite economists or social scientists who have been dominating the national narratives. I think we would have to disaggregate and see that localization takes our social sciences forward. I will stop here. Thank you.
I request the organizing secretary of the conference, Dr. Suresh Reddy, to please propose the vote of thanks of this inaugural session.
All 4 states.
Krishna Garu, Professor Sachin Chaturvedi ji, Professor Revati Garu on the dais and off the dais, Professor Ahmad Rao Garu, Ashim ji, Professor Deepak Nair ji, Professor Sita Prabhudan, Professor Manu Reddy Garu, Alatna Sharma Garu, distinguished delegates, guests in the audience. We are honored with their presence today. Your support and encouragement serve as a testament to the significance of this academic gathering and its impact on the intellectual landscape. A special note of appreciation goes out to the delegates who have traveled from different corners of the country to share their research, expertise and innovative ideas. On behalf of CES, I would like to thank Professor Alat Narayan Sharma ji for his tireless efforts in orchestrating every aspect of the conference. Thank you, sir. On behalf of CES and IASSI, I place on record our gratitude to ICSR, Planning Department, Government of Telangana, ICFI Foundation for Higher Education, NABARD, Hyderabad, and Indian Bank for the financial support in organizing this conference. My sincere thanks to our own CES Director, Professor Revati Garu, faculty of CES, staff, students, and each and everyone from IASSI Conference Secretariat who have worked tirelessly behind the scenes to ensure the smooth planning and execution of this inaugural event. We would like to thank both print and electronic media who are covering this important inaugural event of the 22nd IASSI Conference. Thank you once again, and I wish everyone a fruitful and enriching experience over the course of this conference. Thank you. Thank you very much.